So this is a situation, but again, Europe may be a problem, so it is very important we are very present in Europe. For example, there is a proposal by the Commission to take away all the promotion funds in the products derived from well, in the wine sector or in the red meat sector, which would be a disaster for our agricultural sector. Um, but again, we are here. We need to monitor. We need to be vigilant, and we need to be strong in protecting our agricultural production. There are a lot of technical and political issues to solve, but I do believe that I see right now in the European Parliament a much more pragmatic approach. So I'm moderately optimistic about the outcome and the future of the Italian agriculture. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Thank you very much, Onorevole. And actually, talking about your intervention was very, I think the message is very strong and clear. But regarding that, I'd like to expand a little bit the question and asking you something specific on copper, which we know that the large majority of the EU member state opposed to the Commission's proposal to reduce the volume of pesticides by 50% by 2030. And I would like to know, and we would like to know, what is Italy's position within respect to the revision of this regulation? Thank you.
But from this point of view, we are having quite a fight with the Commission because of the wrong approach. Because we are all in favor of reducing pesticides. But the concept of saying reduce by 50%, it's wrong because countries like Italy, which in the European context is quite a good and virtuous example because we already done a lot to reduce the use of pesticides, is in a much more difficult situation to reduce by 50% than other countries, and I will not make any names, which have done nothing in the past 20 years to reduce the use of pesticides. Of course, if I go from a situation out of control, it's easy to reduce by 50%. If I already reduced greatly the use of pesticides, it's much more difficult to reduce by 50%. So this is the big fight that we are having. But I have to say that, again, we have quite a strong collaboration with both the Minister of the European Affairs, Raffaele Fitto, and the Agricultural Minister of Lollo Brigida. And all these topics have been discussed, and the Italian position on these topics will be extremely clear in the discussion of the Council of the Member States. So, again, I'm moderately optimistic about this. We need to find solutions which, of course, they are environmental on one side, and we all support the reduction of the impact on the environment. But they need to be also pragmatic. They need to be money and funds for research and development in the event that we need to develop different type of products, less impacting on the environment. And we need to have the necessary time for the transition. So in other way, being ambitious is not the correct way to go. We need to be pragmatic. We need to have the technical solution. We need to have the time, and we need to have the money to reach the objective. And then we are all aboard, and we will do everything possible to reach these goals.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Onorevole. Last question, and I think this is quite important, especially for the entire chain of the industry. And we in Italy, and this is an objective fact. In Italy, we take longer to evaluate the approval of substances, of compounds. In average, we take longer respect to the entire to the entire European Union, but also we take longer than described by the decree from the European Union. So my question to you is, what position do you take in respect on the revision, or how can we put it, on providing more resources to quench this time frame, which Italy is actually not complying as other state members?
This is a good question. Unluckily, again, from Europe you get very good things, very good opportunity, also in terms of funding and everything else, but and some dangers, which I already underlined previously. Italy tends to complicate everything and go longer in the bureaucratic process. And this is a problem that we're trying to solve. It's not easy because it seems that we have genetically embedded this approach of complicating our life. But this is applied to everything, not only in the authorization of use of substances. I think a whole bunch of other things. Also, the discussion we're having about the OGMs versus the new breeding technique. Think about the total lack of action against the problems which are infecting and impacting the agriculture in a dramatic way, like the PSA or the African swine fever, like the cimice asiatica, xylella, brucellosi, and so on and so on and so on, and or the damage by the wild boar, by the nutria, and so on and so on and so on. And unluckily, Italy on this has been quite slow, and in certain cases, they didn't even do anything compared to other European countries. So we need to raise the efficiency. We need to reach the system that in Europe is working very well on all these products, because at the end, we do not need this type of problems. We need to find solutions, and we need to find solutions faster, so that we can really focus on maximizing the production and reaching all the goals which are set by the European Union.
Thank you very much, Onorevole. Thank you very much. And your message, again, is loud and clear. And I believe that there is a lot to extract from your words. And what I could feel, it's a positive thing for the future. And also the acknowledgement on the importance of the agriculture for a better European state. And as you said, the agriculture unites the entire community. And despite the events in Ukraine, actually, this is, all these arguments that are coming up today are actually moving all the processes in a much faster pace. So thank you very much. And thank you. So I believe we can.
I thank you. I'm sorry, but I have to run because I have a voting commission in about 12 minutes. But I'm available. Feel free to contact me on all the problems and everything else. And I will be definitely fighting for the Italian agriculture and the Italian excellency in food production. So I'm here, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we can move to our next discussion, and I would like to call for Professor Oriani. And Professor, so welcome, and thank you very much for being part of this event today. A lot of things have been said, but we would like to change a little bit perspectives and talk about sustainability in this case. How would you define the concept of sustainability first, and how sustainability can improve the quality of our Italian products? I think this would be a first important question to answer.
So thanks, Emiliano. Clearly, this is a question that will require much time for getting a full answer I will try to let's say focus my answer on the topics of they were discussing. So clearly now we know, all of us know, that sustainability is a main issue that policymakers make take into consideration in any decision. So that's a matter of fact. That's important. We recognize that the problem we see sometimes, and that might be of the cases, is that when you take decisions and you consider corrective sustainability, we are not considering all the potential trade-offs that decisions imply. In the sense that clearly our decisions are typically suboptimal, are the result of addressing a trade-off, and sometimes there is a too strong focus on sustainability. There is not a full comprehension of what are the potential downside of decision that are not related to sustainability. Consider that there are equally important needs that we need to address with policymaking decisions. If we look at the farm to fork strategy that was mentioned this morning, this is a strategy that is basically trying to achieve at the same time two complex objectives, that is having affordable food for everyone, and not only having food for everyone, but having affordable food for everyone. So I would like to strengthen the accent on affordable, and on the other side reducing the environmental impact of the whole value chain of agriculture. So both objectives are clearly important, commendable. That we all agree that they should be obtained. But the main message of the framework is that we should be able to obtain the two objectives at the same time, and so we should make them compatible. And that's an important point, because this means that when we are talking about the use of copper in agriculture, we should not only think about sustainability, but we should also think about the impact of any restriction on what is the other objective, that is having affordable food for everyone. And it seems that this second aspect has been less on the agenda of the policymaker recently. And also, as was said this morning also by Paolo De Castro, at the moment there are no alternatives that are considered in the case you want to restrict the use of copper. And this clearly is at risk of creating a problem, because if you are just making a decision on restricting the use of a certain pesticide, and you're not providing alternatives that may have the same final objectives, clearly this is creating a potential issue. So this is the first point that I think is important to summarize, to highlight. Second, we should I expect that any decision should be informed by clear and transparent and rigorous methodologies. We know that, for example, the European Union has accepted the life cycle assessment is the most fitting or most adequate methodology for assessing the environmental impact of a product or a technology. The good thing of life cycle assessment is that looking at the total impact generating overall throughout the whole value chain. And so I would expect that, for example, if there is any alternative, the alternative will be evaluated on this basis, because clearly this is the only way to have a potential ex ante effective decision. The second, the third point I had on this point is the time frame. We need transition, even though we had alternatives, and these alternatives will be proven to be more valid than copper. Then clearly you cannot imagine that you have an immediate transition from the one to the other. And considering also that before we're talking about the longer times that the Italian government is taking in approval new molecule, this is another point we should consider. So the risk is that in order to put a too strong emphasis on sustainability, that we think again is important, on the other side you are creating a big problem on points of having affordable solutions for production that clearly will basically be not in line with the objective of the farm to fork strategy. So my is let's say neutral observer, not involved in policy making decisions. I will just say that in general, this kind of decision require a broader, a more thorough, more rigorous analysis about all the aspects that the decision implies.
Thank you very much, Professor. This is very insightful. especially because we're touching now the methodology on the discussion, and this is very important because as professors we know the importance on how can a methodology can change an opinion and a decision. So thank you very much. And continuing on this, let's say, line of thought, I'd like to make you another question, and I would like for you to maybe to tell us your opinion on how would an eventual limitation on the use of copper would impact the made in Italy and the quality of the finished products.
Yeah, so clearly this is another very relevant question. I think one point we should consider is that when we fix a policy about copper at the European Union level, we should also consider the actual differences across the different countries. So I'm clearly not someone that is deeply involved in the field, but I have the possibility of looking at some studies and statistics on the relative use of copper across European countries. This is very different. Also in terms of ratio between the effective and the permitted use. So clearly the risk is that having a restriction at the European level might introduce some bias in the competition across different agricultural and economic systems. So this is another point we should consider. Before making any decision, we should look at the data, how and trying to simulate ex ante how the different economies will be affected, and consider that the use of copper really depends on climate issues, on the type of crops you have in the different countries. It's clear that we cannot just it's clear as well also Fiocchi was saying that an eventual immediate reduction in the potential regulated use of copper will affect our country more than others. And so there are clearly potential risks for some of the products that are typical of our made in Italy. And so that's what we said before, what Fiocchi was saying before. It's clearly a very important issue to be considered at the level of policy making at the EU in order not to penalize our country as compared to other possible other countries that use copper less or that have more flexibility in this moment in order to reduce the use of copper.
Thank you very much, Professor. And then we come back to the same point as you stated before, the terms of substitutions and reducing eventually copper without having a valid substitution. Then we come to a same conclusion. So there is an effect. Actually, is a direct effect on the final products and productivity. So I would really like to say thank you for your insights, and I'd like to pass actually to our next guest, and please welcome Dr. Massimo Perboni from Mutti, and he actually brought us a presentation. So we would like to start from his presentation, and I leave him to talk.
Okay.
Thanks.
So thank you. So good morning, everyone. So I'm Massimo Perboni. I'm in charge of the full tomato chain for Mutti. And it is an honor for me to be here as a part of the meeting actively, as I think that Mutti should be a perfect case history to demonstrate how a use or a significant obstacle to a use of some matter could be a huge risk for a whole chain and for the whole tomato world. I will start introducing in the next slide who we are basically. So for the ones that are not aware, Mutti is the first Italian processing tomato company. So we have a long story. We started in the 19th century. It's a family company, but well, nowadays we are 400 to 1,500 workers during the season. So it's a huge company. We work basically in the north of Italy. We have 2 plants in Parma area, and our supply chain starts from the west, so Alessandria area, till the Adriatic Sea, so Ferrara. And approximately we are working 600,000 tons of raw material tomato. But we have also a business in the south. If you talk about peel tomatoes or pelati, and we are talking about Apulia area, so Foggia. In that area, we are developing a huge business because peel tomato is well recognized, especially abroad. If you're talking about US, the first name of tomato is peel tomato. And so we have a plant in the south in Campania area, but just the plant, all the fields are in Apulia area. So we are number one for sure in sales in Italy. Our main competitor is basically private label. The total amount of private label is the main competitor for us. And we have a huge market abroad in approximately 99 countries. And this information is quite important because if you talk about quality, this is why we are abroad, we are so powerful. Well, we will see an issue. So as you can see, we are quite significant because it's 500 million roughly our turnover for this year, and is going to grow year after year. So it's a positive trend that is a real sign of the importance of this business for Italy. So the next one, please. So quality for us is key. We start from one tomato, one unique tomato. So we don't have class A, class B tomato, just one, the best. And we are spreading in our different products. So we have passata, we have the paste that is quite famous. Yesterday we were talking about it. But first of all, we have polpa. Polpa is the most important product in terms of added value because it's the closest product if you go to the raw material. So it's just few processing steps and that's all. It's almost fresh. And why it's so important to say that it's almost fresh? Because quality of the fruit is completely visible in the product. So if you open a tin can, try to imagine to open it and find black spots or green spots or orange peel of part of the tomato. Try to imagine the effect on the consumer. So please go to the next one. And for us, for our supply chain, we have 2 main threats linked to copper. And we are talking about bacterial diseases and fungal diseases. I mentioned just a couple of the main 2 threats that we are facing with our supply chain. So we have Pseudomonas syringae, so bacterial disease, and late blight, so Peronospora for Italy. And these 2 threats are completely destroying our aim. If we are going to face this issue, we will not able to deliver the quality that is carrying the value along the chain, so agriculturally speaking in Italy, but also for the business, for the made in Italy abroad. So I think that if there was any other support in order to be so effective as copper is, it could be okay. But usually we have an alternative solution just in case of synthetic products. And why I'm telling that? Because we started a very valuable journey a few years ago, 10 years ago, basically. We start spelling word by word sustainability. Sustainability for us is something that is not greenwashing. It's completely another story. We strongly believe, the family strongly believes in sustainability, and we are investing a lot of money, for sure, energies and resources. The next one, please. We started the special project that is called Zero Residue IPM, Integrated Production Management. And in Zero Residue, we are tracking everything that the tomato is getting on top of it. And before starting in a test, an analytical test, we had an information. regarding copper, we can say that normally, naturally, the tomato has a considerable amount of copper in the fruit. So in this case, you can see 0.059 milligrams on top of 100 grams. And usually, the effect on tomato caused by copper is quite limited in terms of residue. In our project, we have a huge number of analytical tests that we are carrying. And in this case, it's a statistic referring to the last season, so the 2022. So we are talking about more than 2,000 analytical tests. And the average value that we found on that, on this list is 0.07. So slightly more than the natural content of tomato. So this is a clear message. We don't have a direct impact on food safety. We don't have a negative impact on that. And we are far, far from the limit. So the limit is 5 mg for kilo, and we are in a very comfortable zone, let me say. So the next one, please, Adrian. Adrian? Thanks. So I was mentioning before zero residue. And in this protocol, this policy, we started in 2018 with the whole chain of the growers. And what we can say is that basically also for the ground, the copper is not a risk for tomato. It is quite simple, the reason. Well, the crop rotation is compulsory for tomato, for IPM, so you cannot go the year after the harvest. So you have to wait at least 3 years. So the impact on the soil, on the ground is really, really, really tiny. And consider that in our policy guideline, we put copper out of scope. As we found naturally in tomato, it doesn't make sense to measure it because it is natural. It is something that is not artificial. So it's compared to 620 different molecules that we are investigating, copper is basically the one that is out of scope, the only one. So copper is useful because could be impactful in the reduction of the other chemicals. So it's a natural support, let me say. And also from cost point of view, if you look to our supply chain, let me say that copper is also sustainable for costs generation. It is quite limited and it is so effective. So basically, copper for us is really crucial. We need this support for our growers because quality is indirectly linked to that. So I strongly support the use of this. Let me say that there are alternative solutions to use copper. You can hear about a possible fertilizer that includes part of copper, but it makes no sense. It is just a deviation for the same reason. So I strongly recommend to keep it as it is. And the only thing that we can ask for is a strong and quick increase of the effort in genetics. So genetics should be the main engine for creating the best scenario in order to optimize the use of copper. I think that that's all.
Thank you very much. Actually, Dr. Perbone, I think we can see the reaction and on that. And tomato, it's at the base of a Mediterranean diet, so it's crucial. And not only that, because tomato is used in many cultures. And I was fascinating. I have to say that it's a world that I didn't know much, and I was fascinated by the presentation. And there is a lot of information which I didn't know, and so thank you very much for this. And maybe I would like to draft you a couple of questions, which, by the way, partially some of them you already have answered in the presentation, but maybe it's good for to stretch out some important conclusions, because actually the key aspects that we need to underline are important for also everybody to keep in mind. So I would like to ask you first, what does the tomato production represent in the Italian agricultural model, and what are the threats on this sector?
So thank you. Basically, I could say that tomato in Italy is roughly 70,000 hectares, if you can say just the surface, the acreage basically. But if you consider the total scenario, so the global scenario, Italy is the third player worldwide. So the first for sure is California, that is roughly 2 times so what we are producing right now. In Italy right now, we are producing something like 5.5 million tons, and we are the main player in Europe. The second one, just to make you aware, is 2.53 million tons in Spain and 1.4 in Portugal. And in the worldwide, we have the second player that in the 2021 was Italy. This year came back from China. So China is coming back, is roughly 6 million this year tons. Well, Chinese figures are always really tricky, because it's officially they spoke about 6 million. So, and basically now they are second, so we are third. And for Italy, it's also important because it's part of a pack. When you go to US, usually you go with sauces, you go with tomato in general, but also with flour, so with pasta, with everything. So it's an ingredient of the total recipe of Italian food. So this is crucial to keep a different level of quality. Try to imagine to compete in the same market together with China, and try to imagine which is the developing strategy that they are going to deliver. Quantity, for sure. So we have to defeat quantity and low price, for sure, with stable quality, not just quality, because sometimes quality doesn't work. We have to be stable for that. So the trick that we are running right now is to create a negative trend in our quality. And that could be really painful for the global market. I don't want to defeat the Chinese market, but we have to define our position in the market. We are the one able to deliver the quality that are expecting our customers. And we have to keep alive this desire from their side. And so the future should be like that. So Italy plays a very good role in this scenario. We are delivering quality. We are not looking for the high quantity. Quality, safety, altogether.
Thank you very much. And not for being Italian, but in tomato, I believe that maybe we are number one for quality with quantity. And it was very intriguing because, like for the food processing industry, for the tomato processing industry, this is true for the entire agriculture sector, and maybe we could say a sustainable quality. So what we are seeking for is sustainable quality, and this is fundamental because it's create sustainability in quality, creates future for next generations to come. It creates induct. It creates a lot of. It creates responsibility towards even the consumer, the final consumer. So, thank you very much. I think there is a lot to think about in your words. Last, and I would like your opinion in how would you, and actually you already partially replied in your presentation, but again I would like to stretch it out a little bit further, is how would you define the use of copper as a solution for a sustainable production of tomato? Thank you.
So sustainability is also key for us, because if you ask Mr. Muti 10 years ago what was the first word, was just quality. Now it's quality and sustainability And sustainable means sustainable from the safe side of food, but also sustainable for our environment. Mr. Muti always says that we are really lucky in Italy because we are getting a huge advantage from our environment. So we we need to give back something. We need to give back a value to the environment. So having a lower impact in terms of chemicals could be an option. And copper in this sense is less impactful compared to the rest of chemicals. We don't fight chemicals. We just claim that we have to use properly. So to maintain a sustainable level of production on tomato, we have to be really, really close to the science. Science is the key to define what is good and what is not good to use. Sustainable is not just a marketing trend. It is something really strong based on scientific uh, information. We study, and we have a cooperation with Università Cattolica. We study everything regarding the impact of chemicals. And copper, as I told you before, it's out of scope because it's not so impactful, but so useful for us. And so we are able to deliver to our growers, to our supply chain, the right tools to deliver the sustainable tomato that we are looking for. So
Thank you very much. And I'd like to add that in your presentation, you said that the use of copper would actually diminish the usage of potential chemical substances. So this actually would go back to the sustainability principle. And I'd like also to comment because the what Professor Oriani said before, for example, and when you study the impact of a substance, you cannot only study the direct impact, but again, for the sustainability, you have to study the entire chain from production to, sorry, from cultivation to production to up to the final customer. So, and you have to study not only under lenses of the chemical itself, but everything that goes around from the economics, so the economical point of view of the substance. I mean, if you put a substance or you introduce a substitution which actually will make the taxpayers pay more for a basic product, but then it's at the same let's say nutrition value as can have another substance, that maybe would not be wise. So we have to study the full chain. We have to understand the impact that you may have from the beginning to the end, in line of circular economy, sustainability, environmental impact, and economical impact too. So thank you very much. You've been very clear and appreciated your intervention. Thank you. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Paolo Tassani. So thank you very much for being here. So Paolo Tassani is actually today in representative for the Copper Task Force, for the European Copper Task Force, which plays a key role in this argument. And Dr. Tassani, let's start directly from the first question. And please tell us what is the main objective of the Copper Task Force, and why you believe copper is so important to the Italian and to the European agri-food industry.
Thank you, Emiliano. Thank you to all the attendees. Clearly, what's the target of a task force is in the name. We are a group of company for which today I've been requested to be a representative. It's a group of companies that invested and still invest a lot of resources, and clearly human and financial resources to keep copper as a crop protection product. And I underline that I have said crop protection and not pesticide, because that's in fact the wording basically is use pesticide, but at the end in Italian we say it's a medicine for crops rather than something that want to kill a pest. Our efforts are to sustain copper within the regulation of crop protection, which is quite complicated. And let me say, in terms of copper, it's even tricky, because as Perboni said, copper is a natural element, and maybe in the next roundtable we will have more opportunities to go deeper in the scientific aspects. But that makes the product a bit tricky to go through a regulation that have been designed for basically synthetic compounds and not natural compounds, and that's something will be highlighted, I repeat, later on, and is at the base of some question mark and points to be cleaned up that might have even a further impact going through the regulation that we mentioned, all this farm to fork. But I will make a remark on that in the maybe next question. So to be clear, the task force is investing to keep copper into the regulation of crop protection, so to keep copper available for farmer. But let me say farmer is not farmer, because we have seen farmer, it's just the first step to go into a much wider world, which is the Italian economy. We talk about the Made in Italy, but the Italian economy, while the GDP of agriculture today in Italy is roughly around 2% or maybe less. When we look to the contribution of this 2% into feeding the industry, like we have seen for tomato, but it's true for wine, it's true for many other channels, we go that this we see that this level of GDP goes to 10 times more. So we underestimate, and when we talk about product to protect crops, it's even one step down, because it's not 2% of GDP, it's maybe 0 point something. The contribution of those is to move this bigger engine, which is the Italian economy. So this is something that we have clearly to highlight and say very, very loudly, because that's what the consumer, that was what the citizens, that was sometimes the politicians are not aware of. And for me, is really relevant. So as a task force, we also organize this event, like we had another one last year in another country, to try to spread this information through the world of agriculture, but also in a wider aspects. Because we think that often the decisions are taken based on emotions and not based on facts. And as we are industry, as we have regulation that are based on scientific aspects, we should just say, okay, look to the scientific aspect, let aside the emotions, if there is a regulation. Otherwise, okay, fine, let's go on emotion. But then the question, sometimes I raise the question, why we should produce so many data when the decision is taken on emotions? Fine, we are industry, so we can think about, we need to have a return on investment. That is quite common, wording now. But at the end, we are industry, but I think we are also strong supporter of the farming. Many industry are driven by managers or owners, because they are private industry, like Mute, could be in the let's say food industry, that do things because they love what they do, not only because they think is a return on investment. So that's really important to keep on the table. And the task force has a very simple objective: give the right information, produce the data that are necessary, and of course, trying to go for the support. Now we are in the step of the renewal. We know Italy is the country that have been selected in Europe by the European Union to evaluate copper. So it's really relevant that we make aware our institution, our ministry, our authorities, to have a special look on, because as mentioned, copper is a strange compound. And if we don't understand rather than evaluate only, we might go through some crazy things. As I would say, it happened, for example, in the listing into the candidate for substitution list. So I would connect on that for a simple matter. The farm to fork has a target, reduction of 50% of pesticides. I use pesticide because they use pesticides as a word. And okay, we are quite advanced in Italy on reducing the amount. We had a very nice journey on our back, thanks to the IPM's application very early. But at the end, we have another target. The Commission sets a target of 25% of organic farming acreage by the 2030. Okay. Then we have another target. Besides the 50%, we should reduce specifically by a given amount the substances that are candidate for substitution. So if I take this picture, I find a little contradiction there, because we want to boost the organic farming on one side. We want to reduce the candidate for substitution, but then we lead to the number one substance as value and the number two as a amount used in organic farming, where Italy has something like 2 million hectares covered. It's copper. And I may also lead to another question. The number one substance is the other one, sulfur. Both substances are natural substance, I mean mineral substance, that are, in case of copper, sitting into the list of candidates for substitution, because now it's clear, EFSA said we need to reevaluate the modeling, very simply because they cannot be evaluated in a specific way. We will see later on. But that's just to say that sometimes we take action based on concepts that have been not carefully evaluated for the environment where we apply, as Perboni said, for many other decisions.
Thank you very much. Very, very insightful, actually. It made me laugh because I never heard about medicine for crops. I like the term.
Agrofarmaci is the name in Italian.
But I like the term. I like the term, and I think that's a term that fits very well. And then you spoke about something that is also extremely important, and is regarding the data. And this is actually one of the biggest mistakes, which define sometimes political decisions with technical decisions, and which have to be one have to support the other. And this is a key, I think, to move forward. As universities, we price a lot research, and research cannot be done without data. And but then the research, we were talking actually yesterday night, that even if you do the best research in the world, but if you don't, let's say, disclose it in the right way, people will not know about that research. And then again, people will take decision based on emotions and not on maybe existing evaluations and studies that are scientifically well done. So this is extremely important, and raises another issue, that is pushing for more R&D within the governments and within the private sector, which is another theme, but is very important. So thank you very much. And I'd like to continue with, actually, I would pose you a similar question that I've posed to Dr. Perboni, which is, do you believe in the use of copper in the Italian agriculture as a sustainable solution? But if yes, in which products would you believe would benefit the most?
Yeah, also I would say it's a question that could take like half an hour to answer, because yeah, first of all, our colleagues have spoken about the sustainability. There are different aspects, and in my opinion, there is an important one which is also linked, is the social one, because if we look to what Dr. Perboni presented, there is a number in his presentation, is 1,000, more than 1,000 people working there. I'm coming from Romagna region, which was, when I was a baby, which was the heaven of fruits and peaches. I remember driving on the motorway to Rimini from Bologna, you couldn't see the hills on your right side. Okay, today what you see, all the hills, one by one. It's quite simple. All trees have been replaced by arable crops, roughly. Okay, we have some kiwi, we have some apricot, but by the way, that's a quite simple reason. No economical payback for farmer. So it's a swap. And maybe the normal tourist coming is saying, oh, the landscape change. Yeah, but if I look to the economy of the region, is it how many workers were for 1 hectare of peaches? And how many workers now for 1 hectare of wheat? It's quite simple. And that's a very simple question to raise when we talk about sustainability. Sustainability has another pillar, which is the social. If you are able to produce value for the citizens, that should be the scope of any governor. And what we see is that there are decisions that maybe people don't think are connected to affect the social matters. And maybe the social matter is that a big industry is shutting down a plant with 1,000 employees. It makes a lot of noise. You see the employees maybe at the railway station blocking trains and making a lot of noise. How many workers disappear when you cut 1 hectare of peaches? No one make noise. So that for me is another element that we have to take into account when we talk about the sustainability. So we think, yes, copper can help sustainability, uh, maybe just with figures, because we were talking about figures. Universities, we were talking about university. We are a Catholic. A Catholic university carried on, I think, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, a study about the impact of the crop protection product reduction that was made by a spin-off named VSafe. Uh, and they carried on an assessment on different crops, looking in the perspective of analyzing all the chain. So not thinking, okay, tomato is tomato. Tomato is, I don't know, half a billion value in tomato fruits. Fine. What's the connected business is more than 3 billion, maybe. Okay, so that's quite different, but it cannot exist without tomato crop. So in this way, we have seen regarding the sustainability that tomato specifically, it's a crop where if you switch from the so-called IPM into the organic, the full bio, you have basically some reduction of yield in general. Okay, but this reduction in tomato is not so huge as in other crop, and that is supporting what Dr. Perboni was saying, because probably based on the two key factors of reduction of production in terms of disease, managing under the organic using, for example, copper, you can reach out a good yield together with a reduction clearly of the input of chemicals. So this is an example how we think copper is important. It's written in the data produced by third party, really important stakeholder that do their own activity. It's not the copper task force or the company activity. So that for me, just a very simple example based on that. Clearly, we have many crops that are lacking solution, especially, and since I am an agronomist, I can say solutions based on the multi-site. Multi-site means, for people not really connected with agriculture, means that those product or solution, they are going to attack the pest on different sites. That means that they are more effective in general, and especially more protected from the so-called resistance. And this is quite typical in the human medicine. Is like the antibiotics are very effective, but highly prone to generate resistance. Okay, so the multi-site products are less and less available on the market. Every year, one or two multi-site products disappeared in the past, and I think now we are counting 5, 6 only. And if we go on tomato, probably we are accounting 1 or 2. So that's relevant for me because copper can play a role in crops where it was not used in the past. We have seen a kickoff in using copper in crops like wheat, because we had organic wheat growing for the industry. On the other side, we had emerging pests. Another important matter is people talk about the climate changes. We see the climate changes. The climate changes means one point, pests change. There are new pests coming. There is a growing impact of bacterial disease, for example, because we become tropical as a climate. And the bacterial disease are so happy to stay in a tropical climate. And they come into Italy. It's a nice country. The environment is nice. And the wide range of crop we have there can be a nice space to grow. And look, copper is among the few products that have an efficacy against bacteria. So we see copper is used on hazelnut, which is another important crop for the made in Italy, which is widening the acreage now, even in the area where where I was seeing peaches, even in my region. It can be used, as I said, in arable crop. Top fruit, it was always used, but clearly, when we detect the use, we shouldn't look to the quantity, because we mentioned quantity is the target for all of us to reduce. We want to increase the efficiency.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And like like you state before, copper, I think, has been used for the past 2,000 years, right? So
Yeah,
approximately, right?
we crossing finger, want to use even in the next 1,000.
Exactly. That's was my point. Exactly. So thank you very much. And I'd like to conclude this session with my last question for you, Dr. Tassani, which refers to the Copper Task Force. And we would really like to know what you think about the objectives of the task, if the objective of the Copper Task Force can help the Made in Italy or not, and
Yeah,
how.
yeah. Let's say, for sure, we think that, as we said, Italy is among the major country that historically were using, and in some cases inventing even the copper-based compound for the crop protection. For us, it's relevant. One point as a task force is the legal framework and the regulation framework that should be uh, well done to evaluate products like copper. And I already mentioned that there are steps by the European Union authorities to move towards the right element, the right instrument to go for this evaluation. Um, Another objective we have is to be listened by the authorities, even in Italy, because here we are in Italy, uh, in order to, in general, and this is true for all the new technologies and new products that we want to drop into the market, to speed up the process of evaluation. The evaluation process is not as fast as the world, the farmer, the industry is asking us to be. The problem is that the investment in a new compound takes a bit of time for the research, and we are talking about sustainable. You can go for sustainable solution based on copper, but what you need to do, you need to apply new technologies on the active. A new technology, I'm looking to some of my colleagues around, registering the product means creating a new product. And we mentioned earlier what are the time for a registration of a new product from the submission date. Okay, those are the figures, but also on top of, we have other hurdles that we clearly pose to the ministry. We need the authorities to be open to listen and try to have a fast movement in the evaluation of what the company are submitting. Aside giving clear guidance, it's really important the time. We talk about sustainability and we give target of, the European Commission gave a target of 10 years, now should be 7 because it has been given in 2020, to reach out 50% reduction. 7 years, if I have made an application of a new molecule look, not a new product, a new molecule at the European level today, I cannot be sure that at the country level, the product will be authorized for the use in the field before the 2030, already today. So I think that what we have to do is clearly highlight that's a mismatching between the target. So if we want to pursue the target, we can talk about how much, when, because there are a lot of speech we can do around that, but give us the tool. Because you set the target, it's like when when you give a budget in a company and you have no product to reach the budget, what you do, how can you reach out this budget? So it's for me, it's really the most painful, being Italian and being and working in an Italian subsidiary of my company. Really, that's the pain part. We have opportunities, and those opportunities are bottlenecked by something we cannot move.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'd like to thank everybody on this roundtable. I think we have reached our time for this session, and I'd like to. I'll come back to you with the final regards at the end of the second roundtable. For now, I would like to put again the video from Onorevole De Castro in this brief break, which we'll use just to change and switch tables. So thank you very much to everybody, and please join us on the second. Please join us on the second roundtable. Thank you very much.
Iniziamo con la seconda parte della table. L'idea è quella di discutere come promuovere l'uso di sostanze inorganiche e sostanze
in pest management. And with me, the other speaker, the important speaker are Riccardo Bugiani, Plant Protection Inspector from Emilia Romagna region, Jeremy Pint from DG Grow European Commission, Professor Vittorio Rossi from my faculty, Marco Dreni, lead technician of CIO, esatto, from Casalasco, yes, no, anche. Giacomo Manzoni di Chiosca, Chief Agronomist for Zonin. Lui, perfect. Matthias Wedener, on behalf of European Union Copper Task Force. Yes, it's correct. Okay. I start with the discussion with Riccardo Bugiani, please.
I'll try to switch from Italian to English. So, good morning to everybody. So, my presentation, after saying that I'm honored, of course, to be invited to this meeting, is to have a look at what the copper is used in for the control of the most important diseases for our major crops. And to do so, of course, I have to say that we all know that the use of copper is limited until 4 kilograms per hectare per year, and with a sort of permission to use it more to several levels, but not over the 27 kilogram per hectares over 7 years. So the most, I would say, the most. Wait, let me see if this works. Not here.
Not working on the screen.
Not on the screen.
Visualizza. Dov'è presentazione? Presentazione qua. Presentazione.
Shall I? I tried just to have to present some examples of how, for the most important diseases for certain crops, copper is used, and yeah. So we all know that copper has a main fungicidal activity, and mostly on mildew and blight, but the other further activity it has, and I would say almost unreplaceable for bacterial diseases. We have, of course, expressed our opinion half an hour ago regarding the climate changes. And climate changes, of course, we are, I would say, tropicalization of our climate. So that means that these kind of diseases are prone to be more aggressive with this kind of climate. And this kind of disease, of course, I would say, has increased their aggressiveness in our crop, in our most important crops. We are in a region where, for instance, tomato processing is one of the most important, and our colleague before has expressed their view over the control of this kind of diseases on processing tomato. But we are on top of it also the bacterial blight are increasing and gaining much attention to give more problems to farmers. So after that, the copper has a secondary fungicidal activity because it's mainly used for the control of some other fungal diseases, for instance, or bacterial diseases during autumn, usually at leaf fall, and in some other cases, and I have to say, is one of the plus for the copper is that is used in many fungicide formulation in partners with many other active ingredients, and this is because of the importance for copper as a multi-site active ingredients to reduce the risk of resistance over many pathogens. If we no some problems, of course. Let me.
No, perché qua stanno.
So.
Sì, per favore. It's because of the English version.
Is the that's
Italian, the screen is
perhaps
more,
would be
sure.
it would work nicely. What?
Perché c'è come una.
No. I took it around PC. I took the wrong PC. No.
No. Okay. Yeah.
So if we take, for example, down in medium on grapevines, the IPM strategies usually define copper at the end of the season. But if you take into consideration organic viticulture, of course, the copper is used through all the season, perhaps with different timing for application, usually stricted timing for application, but through all the season. And together, there has been a lot of attempt to optimize the copper used in viticulture, for instance, and with alternative results, I would say. But for instance, the use of elicitors permitted the use of copper with low dosages, so reducing the amount of copper distributed over during the years. So I would say use of elicitor is one of the I would say one of the aim to reduce the copper on grapevine. Another possibility would be to use tolerant or resistance Dani medio varieties, for instance, not so well spread in terms of techniques throughout Italy, but there has been a certain attempt, sometimes in many cases effectively. Another way would be to use some other products alternatives to copper. I would say botanicals, for instance, and as a tools to reduce or to optimize the timing for application. The use of forecasting model is, I would say, the tools most used by growers now. Because technology is very well advanced. There are a lot of services regarding this forecasting models used both at territorial level than at farm level. I would say that organic viticulture, however, copper is, if we talk about using in sustainable ways, it can be considered, for my part, almost unreplaceable at the moment. So I still think that use of copper would continue to have its applicability on the crops, mostly on grapevine. But half an hour ago, we talked about processing tomato. We at present facing on a crop the disease. The most important disease are early blight, bacterial blight, and downy mildew. Again, the use of cultivars resistance, I would not say resistance, but tolerance to downy mildew. From one part, perhaps bacterial blight can be effectively used. Again, the forecasting model, in the same way as viticulture on tomato crop, can be used effectively. The use of elicitors are in a way still in progress, not completely. As far as I know, there are only one elicitors authorities so far on tomato crops, but perhaps in the future there will be others. And that's another way to possibly reduce the number of not number of application, but the dosage in the field. And another problem. Right. But I would say that in many other cases, for instance, bacterial blight on top fruit, copper is used quite extensively, and I would say with no alternatives. So at present, there are no variety cultivars which are resistant or tolerant to the most important bacterial blight on fruit trees. I would say Xanthomonas or Pseudomonas, for instance, on apricot and peaches. But I would extend the problems also with other crops, which top fruit crops, which are increasing their acreage in my regions, for instance, but throughout Italy. And these are for nuts, almond, and for which bacterial blight is so important. You see during the season, so from bud break until mid of June, such disease should be controlled effectively to avoid damage on fruits and therefore marketability of the product. And averagely, most of the farmers usually apply 3 to 5 copper application on apricot, but from in peaches and walnut, for instance, from 7 to 8. So from bud break to June included. So the amount of copper is could be a problem in some years, and it can't be replaced with any other products unless we talk about I would say some botanicals, for instance, or some other inorganics, I would say sulfur, for instance. But it can't solve the problem. So at present, these kind of crops, which I repeat, are increasing due to the crisis for peach, for instance, in my regions, rely on, for their control, rely mainly for the application of crops, which of course should be reduced in terms of dosage, but in terms of number of application, that's the question can be solved so easily. So for my part, I would say that copper can't be replaced in many crops. Some others, if you talk about bacterial blight, for instance, can't be replaced at all. At the moment, there are several attempts, experimentally level, but not so far so exhaustive to solve these important diseases, which are increasing in the coming 10 years. And so the problem would also be, I just finished the presentation, that just to say that there has been a lot of there's been an increase, enormous increase of fertilizer based on copper, which cannot be, of course, a wanted thing because of security, because processing for the authorization. But if you want to have, for instance, if you want to take a look at the CN, which is the information system, the agriculture minister, you see a lot of, let's say, fertilizers based on copper, overcoming the number of crop protection products based on copper in itself, and that's not a good question, and that's not a good situation. Of course, this cannot be solved so easily, but we, in my regions, for instance, we usually say that the number, the amount of copper applied in a year should include not only plant protection product. Yeah, I'm talking about integrated guidelines, but included also fertilizer. So any other input based on copper. That's the is a solution that we apply in the last 3 years.
Okay.
But that's the situation.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. For that, we already reply a some question, but I have the first question is to put exactly on the table your consideration. It's possible to control without copper some disease, but not all disease. And
Correct.
also, it's possible to control using other pesticide. That means not probably
no,
also this pesticide could be out of the
Yes.
market.
Yes.
That means this is the first consideration. The second consideration is possible to avoid to use copper as pesticide, but it's possible to use copper as fertilizer.
That's
Yes, this is a second, but I believe that with the new regulation, the 2019-1009 could be less easy because there are a limitation of the copper content inside of the
correct.
fertilizer product, but it's possible probably using micronutrients, micro-inorganics component could be, but there are also here a limitation of the percentage, total percentage,
Yes.
probably. But clearly now we are still in lacking of regulation for that. Could be this. In any case, they use copper.
They use copper because they
Yes.
can be replaceable
For
for many
that,
for many bacterial
Your
disease.
statement is without copper is impossible to defend completely against all diseases your crop.
In many cases, in some cases, it can be reduce the dosage, so optimize the dosage.
Yeah.
But in many other cases, for bacterial blight, for instance, it can be replaced.
Yes, I believe that the problem of the rate of application could be a big problem to put in the table, because I believe that is normally is too high. The quantity of the copper in reality is sufficient, very low level of the copper to control the disease, but it's not easy to have a correct formulation. Could be an idea to move a new formulation to
more
avoid
efficient formulation.
More efficient formulation. Okay. Thank you very much. We move to the second presentation. Is Jeremy Pint, but he's not present. Okay, perfect. Please. Please open the microphones.
Is it?
Yeah,
Can
now
you hear
is
me?
okay.
Okay, sorry for that. Thanks for the invitation. I'll have a couple of points, no presentation. I work in DG Grow in the European Commission and in the unit dealing with circular economy, bio economy, and fertilizing products, as well as chemicals. So that would be the baseline of my input to this roundtable. So the previous speaker mentioned that there was some difficulties to fight against some plant diseases, and for that there might be some, or there are misuses of fertilizing products containing copper. We are fully aware of that, and we are trying to enforce that with the help of member states' competent authorities. There is copper as a true nutrient role, so it's not that we can ban copper-based fertilizers from the market, like it happened in the past for phosphonate, for example. So there is an interest of having fertilizing product containing copper on the market. What we need to do is to ensure that they are used according to safe instruction uses when it comes to the environment, worker exposures, and consumer exposures. The fertilizing product regulation provides for that, fertilizing products, including those containing copper, should be placed on the market if the use is safe from both the human protection and the environmental protection. My second point is from looking at copper from another angle. You may know that for the time being, copper is approved as an active substance for pesticide function as a candidate for substitution because it meets two criteria, persistence and toxicity. And the European Commission has proposed to update those criteria, and there will be some change that would impact copper. So in the new criteria that would apply across the board on pesticide, on biocide, but also on these industrial chemicals, the criteria for P, T, and B would not apply to mineral substances and only to organic substances coming from the organic chemistry. So copper, it means that copper would no longer meet the P criterion. Hence, maybe somewhere in the future, when the pesticide regulation is aligned with the new criteria from the classification regulation, copper would derogate from the P and T criteria and would no longer be considered as a substance for substitution. That's all I wanted to share at this point of the conversation. Happy to take any question further down the line.
Okay, thank you for your clear presentation and the statement. That means if I understood correctly, the Commission intend to promote inorganics and as a pesticide because they change the rule for persistence and toxicity, is correct?
The change is correctly mentioned. The goal is not to promote inorganic pesticide. It is because we believe the criteria should not apply to chemicals that are minerals because they don't degrade per. That's one of the interesting property is they do not degrade. There are metals, there are salts, and they can't degrade. So there is no point in considering them persistence because they are persistent.
Yeah, but it's clearly these inorganic are only redistributed in the environment because they are present in the environment and they are moved from one place to another place. This is clearly is important to remember. But I have a provocative question. How the Commission intend to promote crop protection and sufficient food for all at a low price, because I believe that the law move in another direction to avoid crop protection, to reduce the quality of the safety of our food, because we don't forgot we are against pesticide, the Commission, but we need to take into account mycotoxin, for example, and many other contaminants coming from environment, and also as is possible to maintain at the correct level of the food for all people living in Europe. Thank you.
Thanks for the interesting question. You may be aware that the Commission, at the beginning of the von der Leyen Commission, adopted a strategy that is called the Green Deal. And it's about greening the EU society, the EU agriculture, the EU food chains. And one implementing strategy of that Green Deal is a farm to fork strategy, where we do try to foster greener agriculture, greener food chains, and that doesn't mean we are against pesticides. We want them to be used as much as they are needed, but not more. That we use them taking into account the integrated pest management approach, considering all the other tools that a farmer has in his tool or her toolbox, and pesticide is not the only one. So it might be selecting the good plant variety, it might be cropping in a different manner, and when all that tools are not delivering enough to for the farmer to fight against a plant disease, then the pesticide a pesticide can be used. That's the core concept of IPM. So it's a global approach, and by using this global approach, we believe that we can produce in the EU in a greener manner, enough food, and to affordable as well.
Thank you for your consideration. I not agree completely, because I believe that in any case, when you produce food, you are green, but is a different way to see the things. Okay, I like to move to the third presentation. Professor Rossi, please.
Yes, speriamo. Okay, so we were talking this morning about the need we are facing and will face in the future to reduce pesticides, synthetic pesticides, of course, but we are talking about copper. We hope copper will remain in our portfolio in the future, but in any case, we are obliged to reduce the dosages and then the number of applications with copper. So we need alternative strategies, alternative to synthetic pesticides, but at this point also alternatives to copper. And this alternative has to be integrated with copper. So I think the main question we need to have today is if this biosolution, which include natural products, biocontrol agents, beneficiants, and so on, can be developed, tested, promoted, and used with the same logic as chemical products. This is very important because for using these products in a satisfactory way, we need to change our mind. These products are not chemical products. They are completely different. We need to know better this product and to use along the chain from the production, the selection at the beginning, authorization, production, and use, a different approach. In my opinion, this needs an increase in our knowledge that must be come from research, and we also need to share our knowledge among the different actors, from companies to farmers. So I will very shortly list the main important research topics, in my opinion, which are the research topic we are working on in our department, and I will also show you an examples we are following, an example we are following on how we can share this knowledge. So concerning research and which kind of knowledge we need. So we needed to know better the physical mode of action of the natural substances we are using, and the new also the new formulations we are using and developing for reducing the copper amount. So, what about the preventative versus curative or eradicant activities of these natural substances? What about their tenacity with respect to rain off by rain? The duration and the degree of activity, we know very, very few about that. Another aspect, talking about biocontrol agents, so living organisms. What about their ecology? We know really few about how they grow and then survive under different environmental conditions, temperature, humidity, the effect of rainfall again. So, and the substrate, the plant substrate in which we want this microorganism develop. So if we want to control botrytis bench rot, and we spray our biocontrol agent on floral debris, that is a target, or on ripening berries, the environment there is completely different. Maybe we need different biocontrol agents with different requirements for nutrients, for pH, for the microbiome present on these different substrates. So, and what about when we use microorganisms that has to work inside the plant as endophytes and on the plant surfaces as epiphytes microorganisms? The environment and the ecology is completely different, and we know very few about that. So another aspect is what's the relationship between growth of the microorganism and efficacy. We don't have this information. What's the mode of action of the microorganism? Does the microorganism produce antibiotic compounds? When the microorganism produces these antimicrobic compounds, when it is growing or when it is suffering. Maybe the second is frequent in a microorganism because antibiotics are frequently produced under stress condition for the microorganism. So finally, the timing for the application of these natural substances or biocontrol agents. We know that the timing is much more important than classical fungicides because their persistence is shorter. So it's important to develop mathematical models to know the best application with respect to the target and the best timing of the product to be applied for prevent the development of the target pathogen. So I move to the second aspect, how we can share our knowledge about all these alternatives, of course, including copper. Okay, in very few slides, I show you an initiative we are developing in our university, that is the Biosolution Academy. It's an advanced course that aims to create a new professional figure able to look at the biosolution for plant protection with a system approach and analytic point of view, strongly focused on the target, what we have to do. So this new professional figure should play a key role in research and development of these products, but also in marketing and communication. Because for these products, we are convinced that the marketing, the communication cannot be far away from the technical aspects of these products. The risk is to say to the farmer, oh, this product has these performances, but it is too far from the reality. So this is our course. As you can see, there are different aspects we consider from the ecology of the different microorganisms, for instance, the biosolutions. The percentage is the total, the proportion of hours with the respect of the total hours, which are 150 for classes, we can say, and 50 hours for case studies. And so you can see also success cases to learn from previous experience, good experimental practices that are different. When we test a biocontrol agent, the good experimental practices for authorization have different aspects to be considered. And so I don't want, and so some numbers. We had 45 participants, 80% of them coming from companies. We were able to involve 30 different teachers from different university and research centers. This is important for creating a network of experts. We also involved 16 experts in case studies. And so we also had the scientific partners, company representative in a steering committee, helping us to better focus our academy to the problems the companies are facing and so on. This is an idea about the attendance. Okay, more than of them were coming from research and development and technical development into the companies, but also from marketing and business development. And this is important. And it was important for the attendants to work together and to share the same knowledge about technical aspects and marketing communication aspects. So same for people belonging to regulatory offices in the companies. So this is my last slide, just to show you the satisfaction of our attendance for different aspects. We can see quite good or very good. And this is the reason why we decided to open a second edition for the year 2023 and 24. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Vittorio, for very interesting presentation. I have a question, because you are speaking correctly that the Green Deal and the farm to fork strategy push the attention to new solution and to biocontrol agents or other system, but clearly we don't have information about the effect of this new solution. Also, even if they are biological solution, they could affect the metabolic pathway in the plants and in the crop. That means we don't know exactly what happens now in the plant. You believe that this is an area we need to take into account a mixture between biosolution and traditionally compound, or you believe that is possible to control without problem for the health using only biosolution?
I think biosolution, including natural substances and copper, of course, have the potential for being much more effective than what we are thinking today. I must confess, when we were start working on this topic more or less 10 years ago, I was very uh, critical. My opinion was, okay, these compounds cannot work sufficiently well. But entering into the topic, studying the different products, I was changing my feeling. Uh, currently I think that if we are able to know better our compounds, how these compounds interact with the plants, with the pathogen, with the microbiome of the plant and plant surfaces, we can win this this uh, this challenge. For instance, looking at the biocontrol agents, we did a systematic literature review and we developed a modeling approach. And when we consider microorganisms, their response to weather condition, plant, and so on, and we change weather conditions, weather conditions account for 90% in the variability of the efficacy. Okay, so it means that when we face unsuccesses, but when we use biocontrol agents, it's because we are not using the right product at the right moment for the weather conditions this microorganism has to face at the time of application and in the following days. So I think we can win this challenge, but we need a lot of research and we need to transfer these research results to advisors and farmers in a very fast and efficient way.
Thank you very much for, I agree with you, but you see that in biocontrol, copper is included for you. Yes, this is important.
Yes, of course. I agree completely with what Riccardo and others say, that currently we cannot avoid to trust on copper. Copper is still too much important, but clearly we need to think about what to do in the future. And we know that in the best scenario, we have to reduce dosages. We already have low dosages. Then we have to combine these alternatives with copper. And this is another issue, especially for biocontrol agents, which interactions between copper and some microbials. That's another aspect.
Okay, thank you. Now I move with Marco Dreni, please. Italian, yes.
Esatto, in italiano. Il puntatore. Grazie. Intanto 2 semplici parole per spiegare qual è chi è la struttura per la quale lavoro. Il Consorzio Interregionale Ortofrutticoli, siamo una AOP, un'associazione di organizzazioni di produttori. Ad oggi le OP che compongono CIO sono 2, l'OP AIMPO, agricoltori che producono pomodoro e lo vendono poi alle industrie presenti sul territorio, e l'OP Consorzio Casalasco del Pomodoro, che oltre a produrre pomodoro ha anche suoi stabilimenti di trasformazione e i marchi più conosciuti con cui vende il proprio trasformato sono Pomì ed Erica. Lavoriamo prettamente nell'ambiente del nord Italia. Per far capire il motivo per cui per noi il rame è importante, parto da quella che è la nostra pagina internet, dove si fa esplicito riferimento al fatto che tutte le nostre aziende agricole rispettano i disciplinari di produzione integrata. In questo caso c'è il riferimento a quello dell'Emilia Romagna, ma da alcuni anni i disciplinari per quanto riguarda il pomodoro da industria sono stati uniformati nelle regioni Piemonte, Veneto, Lombardia ed Emilia-Romagna, appunto. Siamo andati a vedere quali sono le molecole che possiamo utilizzare all'interno del disciplinare e abbiamo creato una tabella di questo tipo. Probabilmente da vedere è leggermente piccola, ma all'interno di questa tabella sono riportati tutti i principi attivi con i meccanismi di azione e il giudizio che va a dare il FRAC, l'ente che si occupa della valutazione dell'insorgenza delle resistenze ai vari principi attivi, e quello che poi effettivamente a noi interessa di più all'interno di questa tabella è la riga riguardante il rame, dove il giudizio è sicuramente positivo, in quanto grazie alla sua attività multisito è generalmente considerata a basso rischio ed è un gruppo per il quale non sono conosciuti fenomeni di resistenza. Per tutte le altre molecole invece più o meno dei fenomeni di resistenza sono comparsi e conosciuti, ad eccezione dei bacillus e del acibenzolar S-metile. Rielaborando la tabella, ma andandola a vedere in base alle diverse patologie a cui può essere soggetto il pomodoro da industria, possiamo vedere che per peronospora e alternaria abbiamo un pacchetto di molecole utilizzabili abbastanza nutrito, ma se andiamo a vedere le batteriosi, i prodotti da poter utilizzare per il loro contenimento sono veramente pochi. Oltre al rame abbiamo l'acibenzolar S-metile, che è un induttore delle autodifese della pianta, e il Bacillus subtilis, un agrofarmaco di natura biologica. Le batteriosi sono tra le patologie che ci stanno dando più fastidio negli ultimi anni e principalmente sono Pseudomonas stomato e Xanthomonas vescicatoria. Si propongono, le troviamo nei nostri campi soprattutto a seguito di fenomeni temporaleschi violenti, quindi pioggia battente, grandinate e raffiche di vento importanti. E soprattutto quest'ultimo fattore negli ultimi anni ci sta danneggiando i campi. 2022 annata molto siccitosa, per cui uno potrebbe pensare non ci sono stati i batteriosi, ma invece abbiamo avuto molti campi danneggiati dalle batteriosi proprio per la presenza di vento costante e forte. I danni che vanno a creare le batteriosi sono a livello fogliare, vanno a creare delle macchie necrotiche che, andando avanti, se la pressione di malattia è elevata, possono portare al diseccamento fogliare, possono portare alla cascola fiorale perché colpiscono anche il palco fiorale, ma si manifestano anche a livello della bacca. Quando arrivano sulla bacca, di fatto il prodotto non è più commercializzabile. Si è parlato anche di resistenza anche prima. A livello nei nostri campi, il 90% delle varietà che andiamo a coltivare hanno tutta la resistenza a Pseudomonas stomato e negli ultimi anni stanno venendo avanti anche varietà che hanno anche la resistenza verso Xanthomonas. Però dobbiamo capire bene cosa vuol dire resistenza verso queste patologie, in quanto se andiamo a vedere quanto è riportato nei cataloghi delle diverse sementiere, ci viene spiegato che la resistenza in questo caso è una varietà resistente evidenzia meno sintomi rispetto a una varietà non resistente sotto una pressione elevata del patogeno. In più poi abbiamo 2 livelli di resistenza, un HR, una resistenza elevata, normalmente riconducibile alla Pseudomonas, e una resistenza intermedia, quindi un livello inferiore di resistenza, in questo caso normalmente si va a configurare per la resistenza a Xanthomonas. Un altro danno indiretto che ci possono dare le batteriosi è quello legato a problemi di scottature. Una defoliazione della pianta può portare a un'esposizione molto veloce delle bacche, per cui non sono, diciamo, abituate a stare al sole e abbiamo queste decolorazioni sui frutti. Per l'agricoltore si traduce in una riduzione della resa ad ettaro e un abbassamento anche del grado zuccherino, perché venendo lì a mancare la superficie fotosintetizzante non riceve zuccheri. Quindi di fatto è una riduzione di PLV per l'agricoltore. Ma anche per l'industria diventa una riduzione del PLV perché ha meno prodotto da poter destinare a lavorazioni di pregio come sono le polpe e passate. Come diceva giustamente nel tavolo prima, avere una polpa che derivi da frutti aranciati di questo tipo sicuramente non è bella e non è commercializzabile. Un breve riferimento alla sostenibilità. Si dice che un prodotto è una produzione sostenibile quando soddisfa tutte le 3 macro aree della sostenibilità, quindi si parla di sociale, ambientale ed economica. Io faccio un breve riferimento semplicemente alla parte economica. Ad oggi un trattamento a base rame all'agricoltore costa attorno ai 25 euro per ettaro. Se andiamo a lavorare con una poltiglia bordolese, quindi sempre rame, il costo aumenta leggermente, si va dai 25 ai 38 euro. Se lavoriamo con un
Because if we work with a bacillus, the cost goes higher from 65 to 130 euros per hectare, which is of course to be sustained by the farmer. Just a quick conclusion of my presentation. Copper for us is important because it has a great spectrum of action. Its multi-site mechanism of action preserves it from the source of resistance, but when it's used as a partner of other molecules, it also preserves these other molecules from the creation of resistances. The cost of the processing is very, it's not high for the company. Also, tomato has to respect type of rotation. In 5 years, we need to have at least three main crops. This means that we can have tomato on the same piece of land 1 year, yes, and the other one we cannot. In the year where the tomato is not present, the majority of hectares are cultivated with corn, wheat, and so on, crops that have copper-based treatment. So, who cultivates tomato generally give copper to it 1 year and the other not. If we see the what was present 10 years ago and we compare it with today, we see a content in copper that is lower because thanks to the new formulations made by the companies, it was possible to decrease the percentage of copper in each product. So for every treatment, for every processing, we have a decrease in the copper amount to the crops. I think it is more than enough to show you that if 2025 it is possible to use a new limitation. For example, in the tomato industry, I think this could be a problem because we could have a lot of negative aspects for the agricultural companies and the companies that work with copper. So, problem with cost, reduction of effectiveness of some active principles, and the loss of efficacy in some active principles because of the onset of resistances. Also, a worsening of the quality of production because not being able to produce correctly wouldn't let us to have a high quality level, the quality level through which we export our products. I think that's quick. Thank you. I think that the conclusions are similar to the ones that we gave before with the presentation of the first roundtable from Muti. And I also think that one of the main problems that should not be underestimated by the European Commission is cost increase. So, as we did in the past, we take off copper and we increase costs for farmers. I think that these things in a comprehensive evaluation of sustainability, which is environmental sustainability, but in this way we left outside the economic and um, the social sustainability. So now you think that copper is fundamental, right? In my opinion, for sure, because copper is within a strategy of use, a strategy of cultivation. Without copper, it's hard for me to think that there can be a correct control of pathogen, such as bacteriosis, but also if we think about the burnt damages, the use um, of some products, we can use other products, but other products have distribution difficulties and different costs if compared to the use of copper. So a high cost for the company. Passiamo alla prossima presentazione, Giacomo Manzoni, passiamo dal pomodoro alle viti.
Inviting me, and I thought I would do an Italian presentation, so I
Di fare una presentazione in italiano, quindi mi scuso. Grazie. Scusate se la presentazione non sarà in italiano, parlerò però in inglese. Così tutti possiate, in modo che tutti possiate capire bene. Va bene? Ok. Alcune parole sull'azienda che rappresento oggi. Lavoro per Casalini Conazzoni dal 2021. Lavoriamo in questo settore, ma è da 7 generazioni.
of Italian and local grapes, investing on the most important Italian wine region, such as Tuscany, Puglia, Sicily, Friuli, Veneto, of course, where we come from, and Lombardy and Piemonte. We also have a company, an estate in Virginia, USA. These are basically the brands where we that I work for. All the estates represent about 4,000 hectares of which 1,600 in grape grown. The other part is for wood or olives tree and seedings, basically. But today I would like to talk basically about 2 of our 7 estates, which are Castello di Albola and Rocca di Montemassi, because at the end of the day, in viticulture, the main problem, talking about copper, is connected with organic viticulture. Also, I would like to say that the market of organic wines is increasing and about between 30 and 40% in the last few years. So it's something that we cannot, not consider when we talk about viticulture. In terms of organic wine, we are in this moment the third in terms of cultivated area. But again, the market is really increasing. So probably in the next year there will be again more hectares cultivated with organic manner. Also, we have to say that not everywhere is possible to make organic cultivation, or at least it's not possible to do it in a sustainable way, as we were mentioning before. And again, copper is in this moment in viticulture not replaceable, and it's mainly used for fight against downy mildew. And the only thing we could do is monitor the quantity of copper that we have into the soil. And I just report some of the analysis we do on the 2 estates that I mentioned before in Tuscany, because we know that some quantity of copper could be problematic as a certain pH of the soil. On the other side, we really think that good agronomic practices can help us in make the copper more efficient in his fight against downy mildew again. So use recyclable spraying in order to have the best cover of the canopy. Again, the canopy management can be directed to avoid the spread of the pests. And again, we can use elicitators, as some speaker before was saying, zeolite or other bacteria or whatever we were mentioning before, sweet orange oil, which is really important for us. But in this moment, at least 4, 5, 6 treatments of copper in organic production are basically necessary. The other thing that we can monitoring is the biological activity of into the soil, and this is something that it's pretty new in viticulture, probably in agriculture in general, but it's again connected with the activity that the copper can have versus the soil again. We were mentioning before some variety that could be tolerant or resistant to some disease, such as downy mildew and also oidium. There is again another problems talking about new varieties. Probably if someone is not really into the wine world, maybe you don't know that in Italy we have more than 500 different varieties of grapes. And for many of them, we actually have some problems in market, and the introduction of new varieties could be a problem into the market. I'm not saying that I'm against the introduction of new variety, but at the end of the day, probably the market doesn't need them. They could be an answer to the request of the market to much more sustainability in our business, but the nursery, when they sell the young vines of new varieties resistant, they always tell you that you have any way to do 4 or 5 treatments, and especially in the northern part of our country, basically is against downy mildew, and again we will have to use copper. So at the end of the day, that's the point. Just a few words on Equalitas. We were mentioning before the 3 pillars of the sustainability. So if we try to avoid the use of copper as much as we can, the question is, are we will be able to maintain the price of our products sustainable for the people who wants to buy a bottle of wine? I would like to. I mean, there are a lot of people having a lot of answer. I would like to end my conversation with a question like this. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for presentation. Very nice.
Thanks.
And I have a question generally, because it's skip probably in the time of your presentation, is the copper. What is the role of the copper for productivity and value of your production?
But basically, we use copper all along the season and all along the country, and it's fundamentally necessary for downy mildew. So we have other compounds that can be complementary to copper in order to avoid the problems in fertility or production in crop at the end. But these days, copper is the only one solution, especially for organic production, but not only. In a vintage like the last one, probably everyone was using copper to cover the canopy because it's cheaper than other products.
For that is also a problem of the cost for the farmer.
Yeah.
Yes, not only.
It's we are talking about the same topic. The problem is that when we are talking about food and also wine, we must be under a certain price to be able to sell the products on a broad market. And if the cost of production is higher and higher year by year, we will have problem in sustainability of the whole chain. It's the same for tomatoes or for grapes at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you very much. And we are moving to the last presentation of Matthias Weidenauer. Yes, is correct? Yeah. Please.
Thank you very much. I will try to present the regulatory environment for copper fungicides a little bit closer. And as usual, if you're the last speaker, many things have been mentioned already, but I'll, try to, which one is it here? This one. Thank you. I will try to re-emphasize certain things or develop them further. The task force has been presented already. Here are the 12 members. Objective is clear. It's the renewal of the active substance in the EU. What I wanted to add here is that we are currently defending 5 forms of copper, so not all copper salts are included in our dossier. These are 5 practically insoluble salts, and this has an importance in the dossier. The renewal has happened for 7 years, and as we've heard already, this is because we are a candidate for substitution due to the PBT assessment, which is part of the hazard assessment, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But we were also lacking guidance on the risk assessment, and luckily what happened now after the last inclusion are 2 things on the environmental side, and very really thank you to the Commission and EFSA that they put the effort in to develop, it's called a statement, it's not a full guidance document, how to evaluate exposure and risk assessment, environmental exposure and risk assessment for transition metals, which copper is part of. So this gives us for the first time a document that overcomes the last 2 assessment rounds where inappropriate guidance has been used to assess copper and has led to some of the mindsets that we heard it has to be replaced. So we'll come back on that. On the human health side, there was also a new document issued by EFSA about the health-based guidance value for copper. And it was nice to hear from the tomato story that there is no impact really on the residues. This is actually confirmed by EFSA for the total diet. So the impact of the use of copper fungicides to the diet is negligible, is written there word by word. So unfortunately, we've seen also a third new document coming up, which is the food law, also called transparency regulation, which forced us to provide the dossier now or to establish the dossier in a completely new format. And this has required extensive resources in order to get the dossier together for the submission timeline with end of this year. So with this, we have a complex situation which is supplemented by parallel running product authorizations. And as you can see from this slide, this has started before the EFSA statement was available. So the assessment of member states is based on a guidance that is including, according to EFSA's own statements, not applicable to compounds like copper. And therefore, member states are currently suffering enormously how to conclude on that. Similar situation we have on setting the maximum residue levels, which is actually a dossier we had submitted in 2013, which has been kind of put on hold by SCOPAF by asking some further assessments from the human biomonitoring exercise, and recently also about this health-based guidance value document. So you see that the situation is complex and should now be improved by these new documents, but we had very little time to implement them. The plant protection process is, of course, also embedded in other legal developments. And as the speaker from the Commission just mentioned, one very important one for us is the revision or the amendment of the classification regulation, the CLP regulation. So this is about hazard assessment and will introduce new hazard classes, including the PBT assessment, into the CLP regulation. So what Jeremy Pinde had mentioned is not a new development. It actually just establishes a harmonization across Europe, because the provision regarding PBT had been adopted and used like that under REACH and biocides since the beginning, and now will be also applicable to 1107. The scientific reasoning for it is should think about it as a hazard assessment. So PBT assessment had been developed for POPs, for persistent organic pollutants. Think about DDT. You do not want things that you synthesize that are persistent, toxic, and may in addition be bioaccumulative to occur in increasing amounts in the environment. Copper minerals are there already, and the persistent form is not the toxic form. So we are not persistent and toxic, but we are persistent or toxic. So there has been scientific panels at ZTAC who very early on concluded that therefore PBT assessment is not applicable to inorganic compounds. And this is now translated into a harmonized system, which should, and our expectation is the same than the speaker from the Commission expressed, that we will not be renewed as a candidate for substitution in the next round. The other thing is, of course, the new regulation for sustainable use, which will replace the old directive. This has been mentioned, and the discussion is ongoing at the EU Parliament currently, how the definition, where do natural compounds should be accounted for, and how do you match that with the growth goal for organic farming. I will not develop that, as that has been mentioned several times today. There is another law that is coming up, which is the soil health law. And again, we have to watch out. Is copper considered that just as a soil pollutant, or is it considered as a plant nutrient, which it is, as we have again seen nicely in the presentation about the tomato cases. So why is it so difficult and why is it so different? Again, it has been mentioned a number of times. We have to deal with a metal that you can find everywhere, but that is an essential nutrient to all organisms and therefore subject to homeostatic control. So you do not have a monotonic relationship that you would typically find for a pesticide, where you have, with increasing intake, adverse effects occurring at a certain concentration. You have also adverse effects if your supply is not sufficient. So you have what we always describe as this famous U shape, and which has been nicely developed in an EFSA document about health-based guidance values, and would normally should result in assessing an acceptable range of intake. This is where you are in a healthy status. You have good supply and not overwhelming your homeostatic control. So this requires different approaches, which now should be available, including bioavailability assessment, and should also not be used, and then should not apply what is done in a standard way with assessment factors, where you just take a safety factor, which you cannot apply if you need sufficient supply as well. I want to illustrate that in the example of the aquatic risk assessment, where we're talking about protecting Daphnia invertebrates, fish, and other aquatic organisms. Under REACH and under biocides, the PNEC, so the predicted no effect concentration, had been set at 7.8 microgram per liter, already based back by a voluntary risk assessment report. Applying inappropriate guidance and assessment factors resulted, and for the plant protection, in an endpoint for the same chemical, for the same compound, in 0.37 microgram per liter, which is actually below natural background. So we have publications where, for example, in development of certain frog species, at this level you have malformation because you do not have sufficient supply. So it's obvious that this is not a realistic endpoint, and therefore this has been now updated as we have now this new transition metal guidance. We were working with those groups together in joint expert meetings, updated the database. There are new literature, new species have been assessed, and what are ecologically relevant species to be considered, applying bioavailability models, which has not been allowed for us before. And therefore, they come still out with the same kind of concentration, 6.3 or 7.8. We have, in addition, a microcosm study that had been previously assessed with an endpoint of 4.8, so we are suggesting 4.8. However, as you can see, there is already a safety margin compared to the joint assessment, and therefore we are requesting that there should not be a further assessment factor applied on that. Now, the other reason, of course, and maybe one of the true issues and has been mentioned, is soil accumulation. We've heard again that this is not the case in tomato. I would expand on that. This is not the case for any arable crop, but of course, for a vineyard situation, we have legacy burdens of copper from excessive applications in the past. You may have heard about a big earthworm study we are conducting since now almost 20 years, which had dose rates of 4, 8, and 40 kilogram, which has been disputed by the authorities quite for a long time, still considered the gold standard, but was not suitable to comply with the 28 kilo 7-year that has been granted at last renewal. So we've launched new studies directly in vineyards in a realistic system. We were looking for situations where we have already quite a significant concentration in the soil. Around 100 milligram per kilogram is quite representative for a high percentile of European vineyards. And we applied in 3 years 12 kilos, so the average of 4, but with a peak at 6 in the second year. And we, in parallel, also had a plot where we did saw out some seeds which are supposed to provide some phyto extraction. I have not all results there yet, but from the starting point, you can see there were healthy populations, more than 100 earthworm per square meter on one side, a little less on the other side. This has increased in the meantime to 200 worm per square meter, which is extremely high for vineyards. And sorry, just in the short time to present that more in a graphic, December 21 is the situation after 6 kilogram have been applied. And what you can see is you find diverse communities with a balanced number of species. The endogeic species, which is the group that is supposed to suffer first from copper applications, is well presented, in particular the Arcaliginosa, which has been one of the species debated about. So we have endogeic and Aedes taxa present, and the juvenile adult ratio is high. So for the time being, that seems that we can, with these studies, also underpin the 28 kilo in 7 years proposal or current status. And I do not yet have the soil copper concentrations to see if the phyto extraction plot shows a slower or no accumulation anymore, because this is the thing we have to consider and address in the future. So in conclusion, we have had a hard time to get a dossier together for the end of the year. We're still in panic mode for the last few weeks. We have to submit this to a new rapporteur, which is Italy. Co-rapporteur will be Poland. And for the first time, a new guidance will be implemented there. So we tried to improve the risk assessment and are expecting an adequate scientific evaluation, actually for the first time for copper. There is also a high emphasis on presenting monitoring data in this transition metal guidance, which I have not developed to not take too long, which will be subject to significant discussions in the future, according to the soil health law. So target is still renewal, not as a candidate for substitution, allowing for 4 kilo a year with a flexible dose scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you for very clear and nice presentation. I believe that your put one problem is related for me to the new law on soil health. I believe this is clearly could be a problems for many product applied in the farm, because if you don't check, control, and discuss this law, could be very bad results.
because depends of the people that write this.
Yeah, if you see some documents where a concentration, soil concentrations at 25 milligram per kilogram are presented in red, suggesting this is polluted, and where you know this is the natural copper concentration in southern European soils, for example, you wonder, yeah, where this would go. But it could also be there is also an element of biodiversity protection in soil, and maybe synthetic pesticides get more under pressure, and copper at normal levels in soil will have actually a positive effect. So we will have to see, but we have to carefully watch which direction
carefully, because it is very complex to define limits of each contaminant in the soil, because it's natural or not natural, what happens, which is the target of the organism you like to defend. What means beneficials and health of the soil is not clear, because it's still in discussion what means exactly health soil. Exactly. And also many people, you forgot very nice results. There is a resilience of the soil and the population of the microorganism and other mesofauna and earthworm, etc., is changing during the time, and is able to respond to the contamination, etc. That means I believe is a big challenge, and is needed to care this point. I like to greetings for all presentation, because it's clear and very nice for the discussion. And I don't know if there are time for discussion from the audience, or is not considered for that. I believe that the results, we have still one presentation, of course. We have still one presentation. For that, I believe that the conclusion will be now. And thank you very much for all participants to the roundtable.
So thank you very much. We are on the final phase of the event, and I actually took some notes to resume what have been talked today, and it was very interesting. And I believe that these kind of sessions are very useful for everybody, for experts and non-experts, again, because we are facing an economy which is becoming more and more circular. So everybody at a certain stage is involved in even in other processes of the same industry. So I'd like just to briefly see what we have discussed during the presentation. We had two roundtables. One is actually socio-economic roundtable, and the speakers resumably they talked about different aspects. And first of all, I took notes, so I managed also, if you don't mind, to read a couple of them. We talked about the current geopolitical situation in Ukraine, and how is actually this process has exposed the fragility of the European food system, while the industry is in transaction. It's very important to keep and maintain focus on the sustainability, and this is happening through the usage of the Green Deal, the Farm to Fork strategy, and the regulation on sustainable use of plant protection products. These objectives must be appropriately combined or balanced with food security concerns. We have spoken about the problems of actually having a drastic change, which brings unexpected consequences. This also is a theme that is a matter of extreme importance, because we have seen in the past, and we can look at history, where drastic decisions have actually created more issues than sort the problems out. There is one attempt that is very important, where we talked about, data actually tells us a story, and the story that the data tells us, it's important for us to hear. And so we need to rely on data, we need to rely on scientific methodology, and not take decisions by impulse. Last, we talked about sustainability in the first roundtable, and sustainable quality, which is extremely important. We are moving toward this direction. The European Union is very focused on sustainability. Again, sustainability have to be accompanied with data and with scientific analysis of the matters, which have to take in consideration the entire chain. So not only a specific point in the chain, but the entire chain, from the economic aspect to the social impact, to the environmental impact, etc., etc. Then we move to the technical roundtable, which was actually I have appreciated the interventions were technical, but also even people without deep knowledge of some of the technical aspects we managed to understand. And we can agree that due to the climate change situation, we're going to need more and more crop protection, and which copper will actually could play and will play a definitely important role. We also define that copper is actually will contribute to the value of the Made in Italy. This is very important, because Italy again has an agriculture which is based on, for example, vineyards and tomato, like we saw with Muti, which is extremely important. And the copper is actually decreasing. The amount of copper can actually harm the Made in Italy, and needs to be confirmed. Then we spoke about a very important issue, that is the timing for the Italian evaluation authorities, that should actually reinforce its own staff and its own resources, and should get in line with the European standards in terms of timings, so as the product can reach the market much faster. This is an extremely important aspect, which requires attention towards both the government and the private sector, and needs to be sorted out. This means losing not only money for the companies, but means losing competitivity, sorry for that, and means also having higher prices, and the market will not be in line with the other European markets. Copper and sustainability go hand in hand. This is also very important. As we said, most of the organic agriculture is based on copper, and as a natural substance, should be taken as is, and should be let's say, integrated with the green solutions for our environment. At the end of the day, I think was very clear that we need copper more than ever, and we need to foresee for the future and for the climate change that is coming up, and we need to have a very, very dedicated look at the data that is coming out, and we need to talk with experts, we need to talk with the people, we need to make an assessment that actually will provide us with the right decisions to make. So I would like to thank everybody, and EU Focus and the University of and the Università Cattolica actually are pleased to welcome you, and we really hope that today you managed to reinforce your knowledge on copper. And with these notes, I would like to thank everybody from home, the people are present here, the speakers, and everyone who participated in the group. and even the people who helped us with the organization. And thank you very much. Have a lovely day. And with this, we close the session. Thank you very much.